if we want to be good, if we want to be of good to our community, we have to be nourished from the source of goodness. We have to be nourished from God, because God is what is good. And I have to just say this, that if, when we look at our church and when we look at the church in the United States, if the consistent outcome of our instruction, if the consistent outcome of our teachings, if the consistent outcome of our practices is hypocrisy in our leadership, racism in our doctrines and theology, and the politics of power and cruelty in our voting booths, then God has not been the source of our nourishment. Something else has been nourishing us if that is what we are consistently producing in our midst. Now, I don't mean to say that this is true of all churches. Of course, it's not true of all churches. It may not even be true of most churches. Like you, I know so many good churches right here in this community and all across the country, people who are going to God and doing their best to discern through their study of Scripture, through their fellowship together, through their service to the community. They are working to discern the true source of God. And they are putting themselves in a position to be nourished every day so that they can nourish those around them. Unfortunately, it's not those churches and those leaders and those followers of Christ who tend to make the news. Because in a culture where news is profit-driven, it's always bad and destructive news that makes the most noise. And so part of our task, friends, here at the Oceanside Sanctuary is to make sure that those of us who are going to God to be nourished so that we can be nourishing, for those of us who are going to God to be healed so that we can bring healing, part of our task is to make sure that our community knows that we are here working for the good of our community. But first, we have to make it a priority to connect with God in ways that help us to do exactly the things that are being described here in Revelation 22. And that's something that we're going to visit as we move forward. The holiday seasons are just around us. The Advent season is coming up in just a couple of weeks. And during that time, we're going to visit passages that remind us of what it looks like for us to be hopeful about how God comes in our lives. And then starting with Christmas, we're going to begin to look at passages of Scripture that reveal what it looks like when God does come into our lives and brings good news. So hopefully, as we do that, we will continue to become people who are able to connect with the truth and the goodness of God so that we can be transformed to be good for others. I want to close again with a word of prayer, but before I do, I just want to ask a couple of questions for you to chew on today, as usual. The first question is simply this: what are the practices that you engage with that make you feel most nourished by God, make you feel like you are growing most to become a person who is able to love and to be loved? And my second question is, what are those practices in your life that tend to distract you from being connected to God, from being nourished by God, from growing into a place of goodness because of your relationship with Christ?